for low growth and low growth and low employment. They want stable currencies, meaning no threat of stimulation and growth. So they're delighted when the pampered Western workers are beaten down more and growth goes down and so on. This is a big change in the last 20, 30 years and a huge weapon in the hands of those who are trying to drive the world into a sort of a third world picture, including by now the leading industrial societies like us. Back in 1970, when this process began, before the deregulation of currencies, about 90% of the capital in international transactions was related to the real economy. It was for investment or trade. About 10% was speculation. Those figures have radically changed. By 1995, it was 5% related to the real economy and 95% speculation. That's a huge change, besides which the amount has just zoomed astronomically. That's why 25% of the corporate recruiters at MIT now are from Wall Street. They're going after hotshot PhDs in physics and math, who they don't know anything about business, but they just have to be able to figure out clever techniques for robbing people with all sorts of complicated scams, so you can shift money around, every microsecond, a couple of billions of dollars, to undercut currencies here and there and so on. That's 25% of the recruiters right now for physics and math mainly. The same thing's happening in England, incidentally. They're going after Oxford and Cambridge PhDs in math and physics. It was well understood by the late 1970s that this is going to be extremely harmful to the international economy. James Tobin, who's a Yale University Nobel Prize-winning economist, gave a presidential address to the American Economic Association back in 1978, in which he pointed out that unless something's done to slow down these financial transactions, it's going to drive the world into a low-wage, low growth, and though he didn't say it, high profit equilibrium. And that's exactly what's happening, and it's being stimulated. Justice social policy is deliberately designed to increase state criminality, to crush the efforts of working people to organize, and to make globalization of production easier so you can drive down wages everywhere by just playing one workforce against another. So it's being designed to stimulate these flows in the interests of what makes sense if you're in the top fraction of, tiny fraction of the world's population. Low growth, low wages, and very high profits. And so the Caterpillar business strategy is indeed driving people from defiance to compliance, and will continue to if it's allowed to. There are other factors too. Take, say, automation, which is putting plenty of people out of work. A lot of that actually, a lot of it was designed here, in machine tools and so on. It's alleged that automation is, results just from market forces, so, you can't stop it like the force of nature. But that's complete nonsense. The topic was studied in depth by David Noble here, no longer here, incidentally, partly for this reason. He's teaching in Canada now, but he did the main studies on what actually happened in developing numerical processing and other automation techniques. And what actually happened, in fact, is that it was so inefficient that it couldn't be done through market forces, and it had to be done through the state system. We have a huge state industrial system in the United States called the Pentagon. MIT is a small part of it, way out at the periphery. But it's a technique for funneling taxpayer funds to high technology industry. And automation was developed within the state system for decades, in fact, in the Navy and the Air Force and so on, where cost doesn't matter because the taxpayer is paying for it anyway. And it was designed in very specific ways, not to be efficient, not for economic efficiency, but for control and power. As far as the automation technology is concerned, it could be used to put decision-making power and control into the hands of skilled machinists and get rid of managers. technology is perfectly happy to be used that way. Or it can be used to de-skill machinists, increase levels of management. Yeah, the technology is happy that way too. It doesn't care. That's the way it was designed. And it was designed as a weapon of class war through the state system because it couldn't possibly be done through market forces because of its inefficiency. That's true of containerization. It's true of machine tools. In fact, it's true across the board. It's even true of computers. These are among the huge mechanisms of social policy that are used to ensure that the pampered Western workers have to give up their luxurious lifestyles. And the effects are pretty dramatic. The one effect is just a vast move towards a kind of totalitarian system in which highly concentrated, unaccountable private power determines what goes on. Nobody has a word to say about it, and for the most part, nobody knows anything about it. And the effects are very obvious just in the numbers. Every year, Fortune magazine comes out with a big thing on the Fortune 500. This year is a particularly interesting one because this is the 40th anniversary, so a big celebration of the Fortune 500. The May 15th issue is worth looking at. I don't know if you recall, but some years back, Abby Hoffman wrote a book called Steal This Book, and that's what you ought to do with the Fortune 500. Don't pay them $4.50 for it or whatever it costs. But if you can pick it up somewhere, it's worth looking at. Very big, fat, glossy volume, which is quite intriguing. In the last years, for 1994, which discussed 1993, they described 1993 as a dazzling year for corporate profits, even though sales growth was stagnant. So you're not selling anything, but they're making huge amounts of money. 1994 was far better. They say profits went up a stunning 54% on a sales growth of 8% and employee growth of 2.6%. You just listen to those numbers and you see a lot about the world. Profits up a stunning 54%, sales growth 8%, meaning virtually no change, and employee growth 2.6%. That doesn't exist. The numbers are revealing and they mean something. And concentration has gone up too. The Fortune 500 now controls 63% of the total U.S. gross domestic product. Now that's a level of totalitarianism that's, remember, these are totalitarian institutions, as totalitarian as human beings have ever devised. And that's a level of totalitarian control that has very rarely been reached in the world, if ever, you might check. Among the biggest gainers are Manpower Incorporated, which hires temporary workers. Very important fact. Their profits were up 35% last year. Sales up 35%. What they call sales, meaning selling people, was up 30 to undermine pampered Western workers. Remember, because they're selling temporary workers, so you don't need benefits and you don't need security. You get a flexible labor market. So their sales are up 35%. They're now number 237 in the combined industry services list. Services doesn't mean guys who clean the offices. It means investment firms and banks and those guys. They're 237. Kelly, their sales are up 21%. Well, that also tells you something. These are another form of the techniques for undermining the workforce, and the workforce means the population. Workers means most of the population, their families, their children, and so on. Caterpillar is now number 61 in this combined industrial service list. Its profits were up 46% from 1993, and the earnings per share were up 46%. That's not small. And this is expected to continue. The May 1st issue of Fortune has a big article called "Why Profits Will Keep Booming." Remember, 1993 they were dazzling, and they were even more splendid in 1994, they put it. That's the fourth successive year of double-digit growth in profits, and they expect it to go on through 1996 at least. Remember, this is a period when wages are going down and working hours are going up, but profits are just dazzling. Earnings per share, they say, have doubled since 1991. The return on capital has more than doubled, considerably more than doubled, since 1980. Profit margins are up. Working hours are up. Temporary workers are way up as a proportion of the workforce. The only thing that's down is wages and benefits and working conditions. Other things are up too, as I mentioned before.